Welcome back to the discussions, Perspectives, Pandemic and IT Modernization, sponsored by AT&T on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Ryan Cody, the Transportation Department Chief Information Officer. Ryan, before break, you just started telling us about kind of looking forward a little bit. The fact is, you've probably maxed out your network at one point back in March. Now you're looking at how to accelerate and upgrade, rip and replace a lot of hardware, get to the point where you could scale again if you had to. Let's talk about that a little bit and how does that fit into your broader IT modernization goals? And of course, if we talk network upgrades, we got to talk Enterprise Infrastructure Solutions, EIS contract program, because that is another big area that a lot of agencies are using to continue to move to things like SDWAN, which you mentioned earlier. So just give us a sense, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. That's a great question. In addition to the hardware upgrades and sort of a re-architecting of pieces of the network, as you mentioned, EIS plays a big part in that. And I don't really follow where the other agencies or departments are in government, but I think we're okay. I think we're on track. I think if you watch or read the street or look online, you'll see that we did recently award the EIS contract to AT&T, and we're very happy with that partnership right now. Even pandemic aside, I had 5 executives from AT&T in my office last week in DC, and myself and the deputy CIO and our network team, we all sat down for over an hour and we talked about the future of the EIS contract and the solution and what it brings to the department and the need for it to be executed in a timely fashion, without errors or mistakes or downtime, things like that. So we're very excited about this new opportunity. We think the work done by GSA for all the EIS providers is a benefit to government as a whole. It gives us a better opportunity to build out a bigger, faster, more robust, more secure network, and without a lot of the headache of constantly recompeting these things or worrying about who has the latest and greatest. We let GSA do all the heavy lifting now. We get to partner with their chosen providers. Again, in our case, we like AT&T for this. They've been a partner of ours now for many years, and we think we're going to execute this ahead of schedule, hopefully. Again, not super familiar with the deadlines that have come from GSA or the Hill or saying you'll get to this by a certain date, but I'm vaguely familiar with some of the goals in mind for GSA as it relates to all of government departments. And again, we think we're going to bring this ship into port well ahead of schedule.
I have to laugh just a little bit when you say I'm not really familiar with the deadlines. I can help you out with those if you'd like. I've been writing a lot about the deadlines.
Sure.
you have about a little bit over a year or so to 2 years to get this done. So don't worry, you got time. Interesting when you talk about looking forward to upgrades and looking forward to re-architecting the network. That's going to open the door to a lot of new capabilities as well. You mentioned SD-WAN earlier. How is this network piece kind of the foundation for for your strategy, for your goals looking forward, again, 6, 12, 18 months from now? Whether or not you're in this role, somebody will be, and somebody will be obviously continuing to move the ball forward.
Sure. Yeah, it remains a critical piece of the puzzle, right? Even with the proliferation of everything mobile and with the somewhat still out there promised benefits of 5G networks, at the end of the day, everyone in this business knows that the most important part of the puzzle is getting the application to the user. And that application is riding a wired network somewhere, right? A hard network, layer 1. There are data centers all over the globe and even our own internal data centers where these applications reside, where the data resides. And that connection is made to an application somewhere on a terrestrial-based network. And again, until we launch data centers in space, I suppose, and start riding Starlink, we're faced with the reality that this data is a terrestrial-based network, and we're probably riding, someone's 10 gig fiber to and from data centers out to the endpoints. And then when you get to the cloud, again, you're taking a route somewhere that's not mobile, right, or wireless. Again, lots of wireless, of course, out there, lots of mobile, lots of 5G promises. But for the most part, this network remains a hardwired, connected network, terrestrial-based, whether it's copper or fiber, and that's the path to the mission. So our job is to make sure that path is large and robust and secure and always available to our users.
It's an interesting idea here. So let's pull on that string a little bit about that path to the users, to the mission, to the citizens even. Walk me through kind of how you're ensuring that your technology strategy is taking into account all those citizen services, all those customer needs. What have you done to bring in the customer into the discussion more? What have you done to, if you will, to take a step back and say, okay, what's our user experience, user-centered design, all the cool buzzwords?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of activities that are going on currently. A lot of work has been done already. One of the most important ones probably is we're in the middle of, and mostly done, in fact, with bringing all of the Department of Transportation web applications in a single platform. So we have roughly 1,000, 1,100 or so public-facing websites that are customer-focused, customer-based, right? Whether it's truck drivers or pilots or people wanting to get a drone license and different things. We have a lot of external public-facing websites, and over the years, those were always handled locally in the modes. And so we've taken all of the department websites, brought them into a single unified platform, and secured it first and foremost. Make sure it's safe and encrypted at every level, and then we're in the midst of upgrading all of those websites to be, just compliant first of all with HTTPS and different things like that. We've made them, responsive to mobile devices, whether it's trying to improve UI, UX interface, things like that. Again, we know we have a lot of customers that come at us from a lot of different devices and a lot of different ways. So we want to make sure that every website we deploy is responsive in the best possible way. And then again, we're constantly building new ones as well because we're getting new requirements, we're deploying new capabilities. And so again, we're making sure that when we deploy now, it's deployed in the latest, greatest platform with all the what's best for the public. And then at the same time, we have a lot of internal stuff too, right? We provide service to the 50,000 plus internal DOT employees. So whether it's health benefits or time systems or different things like that, we also have a lot of internal facing applications that we need to make sure are always up. One of the big things we've done, just to ensure that robust posture is, again, by moving some things to the cloud and begin to replicate them, we now have multiple instances of these same applications, all virtual, of course, deployed across the country. So we did an assessment a few years ago and looked at a lot of these, what we call single points of failure, right? Of course, what that is. So a lot of these applications resided in one place only, or they might have been in either a government data center or a public data center, or even in the cloud, but they were one of one. And so we've had to scale out these applications. We've replicated them across multiple data centers and just make sure now that we've got multiple paths to multiple instances. So even if we experience either an outage on a network or an outage in the data center, that traffic can be rerouted and these things have greater uptime than they've ever had.
I think that is something that a lot of agencies are seeing now, because what I've heard recently is we used to have 4,000 sites, as an example, offices and people out there. Now, in DOT's case, as an example, you have 50,000 sites because each employee is their own site. So if they, it's one thing to go to your office in Denver or your office in San Antonio or whatever and get it. But if you're at home and there's an outage, that changes the way you work. That changes so much. Is that something that you've looked at your network and said, okay, we can improve through the network, or is it, as you mentioned, it's a decision you made to move these applications into more of a virtual environment, so they live in multiple places, they collect, you can bring the data back, or do the requests for the information? Is that, I guess the question is that virtual environment something that came because of the pandemic, or is it something you're on that path already?
Yeah, we were on that path already. I would say, again, when we identified the single points of failure, these single instances out there, we said, well, okay, we've got to replicate these, make multiple instances so we can ensure better uptime. We don't want outages. But we really did that from a uptime perspective, or a DR perspective in some cases, where we didn't want single instances, single points of failure, and we didn't take a hard look at where we put those copies, for instance. And post-pandemic, now we've gone back and taken a harder look at that and said, you know what, it makes sense for us to adjust some of these instances geographically. Again, so we can, and with the cloud, of course, with different providers in the cloud, that's fairly easy. We can specify where instances of our applications can reside. So we have really spread them across the country now. We have a lot of stuff we moved out west. We have big footprints in Oklahoma City and Colorado and places like that. And so we did take another look at that. Said it makes more sense for us to spread these out and give people different paths to these applications, but also locate a lot of them closer to where they are. So latency is lower, response times are better, and they ought to have a better user experience. If they're living in the mountains of Colorado and they're riding, their satellite connection or Comcast or Verizon, whatever their connection is, we can give them a little better experience even than having to come all the way to the East Coast to hit a data center.
Ryan, we were just about out of time, so just maybe in 30 seconds or less, give me a sense, the as a service model, a very popular model that we're seeing across a lot of agencies or even managed services. Is that something you're starting to consider, or does that play a role in this network modernization, this IT modernization effort?
It does, certainly. And I tell vendors all the time, and I get, you can imagine 100 calls or emails a week, people trying to sell the department things. I tell people all the time, you have to be flexible, and you have to give me a solution that solves a problem for me, first and foremost, but give me something that is subscription based, something that I can get in and out of if I need to, if something better comes along, or if we have problems. I think, again, the future more and more has to be as a service, which is, we know sort of an anathema to the vendors and a lot of people in DC, because everyone, and this is not just government, it's public too. You want to get somewhere and you want to get sticky and you want to stay forever and be a good partner and get revenue for a decade, which is fine. Strive for that, and you will get that if you prove that your solution is the best. But it really also has to be presented as a service to us. And as long as the service is good, solves problems for us, it's absolutely a viable and I think growing solution moving forward. Everything today is as a service.
All right, well, very good, great advice. Ryan, we could talk so much longer, but unfortunately we're out of time for today. So let me thank my guest, Ryan Cody, the Transportation Department Chief Information Officer. Ryan, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Jason. Same.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Perspectives, Pandemic and IT Modernization, sponsored by AT&T on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search AT&T.